I'm going to say for this foot here, the widest part of my frog is right here. And I don't really need to do much excavating to find where the point of the frog is. It's right there. So, take hoof evener, line it up on that line, go forward, is about 3 3/8. Kind of wrestle it into the cornet band, and we're at about 3 1/2. That's an 1/8 of an inch difference between his frog length and his dorsal wall toe length. I look at that foot and I go, he's kind of worn that toe off, kind of dubbed it a little bit. There's not much toe to take off from that horse. Did everyone kind of agree with me on that? No? Yes? So, and that was with the foot that I felt was the more upright one. So this is probably the one that I trim a little bit, maybe a little bit more heel if there's there. But I'm probably going to leave as much mass that I can at the front half of the foot. So, unfortunately, this horse doesn't have as much foot to make the frog playing thing make a lot of sense. But we'll just do it for fun. So, this frog is a pretty ideal frog in that it's pretty healthy, and that it's not cupped out or whatever. So it's pretty easy to lay the ruler on there. Just go this way with it. You can see that frog is on the same plane as the toe. So if I was to take my Sharpie and come forward with like I would if I was, I'm scribing. There's nothing to scribe, right? Now I didn't need to measure that foot to tell me that there's not a whole lot there. But on some feet it's helpful. So we'll go ahead and trim this one. Most of these horses have already exfoliated all their sole. And I can even palpate and actually get a little bit of reflex in that sole. So to do any knife work other than the wire brush is going to be detrimental to the horse. I remember when the first time I went to Bob Marshall's, one of my buddies had a brand new Frank Ringo knife, and they showed it to Bob, and Bob just took it, put it in his pocket, handed him a wire brush, and said, "That's all you need to trim that horse with." And so a lot of these horses in this way, and like the thoroughbreds I used to do, like I never had to sharpen a knife, hardly ever. A little bit of frog tags, but you left all that sole in because they needed it. So it would be a quick trim if I wasn't talking. So the frog doesn't need a whole lot. There's just a little bit of shelving with the frog tissue. We're just going to trim that up a little bit. And like I was saying, I do a lot of feet in hand this way, just to kind of save them from having me jerking their leg out, making them comfortable. One thing I've gotten the habit of lately is trying to clean out the origin of growth at the back of the heel. I'm just doing right there. And when you go and sight the foot, it's another little trick that you see if there is more mass on one side or the other to help maybe like medial lateral imbalance or whatever. And this horse, there's not even a lot of foot to even take off in the back half. But one of the things, I think at the first team trials in 2021, I asked one of the judges, Craig Turkin, I asked him to come look at and tell him what he thought of the shoe, and he said, well, everything looks great here, except you left all this flappy stuff right at the back of the frog. He says, it's just like if you meet a really attractive woman, you start talking to her, and then she smiles, she's got a big piece of like lettuce or something on her teeth. He said, you left a bunch of lettuce on the horse's foot. So if it's something I've been working on, it doesn't come, I have to think about it. It's not first nature, so I'm gonna have to come back to it. So I don't know if you guys want to look at this foot before I touch it, but I'm just going to use a rasp. I think if I even take this wall down, it's going to be too much. I think a lot of this, I'm just trying to build some depth of foot and try to contain the foot. This horse's job is a school horse, so just doing lessons and such. I think because of the wall consistency, we're gonna have some clips on there, take some of the shear load off. got a pretty brittle hoof wall. Normally when I'm shaping new shoes, I will peg the foot, meaning take it forward and take the distortion and the dressing out. And because this horse has got kind of brittle, thin walls, I'm just going to cut my shaping from the bottom and not dress it. Try to leave as much material to nail into as possible.
Luckily we've had some practice for myself. Right off the bat, the other shoe I held together.
I've never seen it
Yeah. Yeah.
So I measure feet circumference-wise. It just made sense to me as far as trying to figure out what size shoe to put on a horse. And I've learned to do length and width for doing like certain competitions, but for the most part, I figure out what the foot is, and I know what my subtraction is, and I go with it. I do the same if I'm hand making shoes and cake shoes. I know what the circumference of most of my cake shoes are on the truck, so I measure a foot, and let's say the foot is 14 inches, I figure I need a shoe that's 14 and a half. That's a 1/4 inch per branch, or 1/8 of an inch for expansion, 1/8 of an inch for length. 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch, right? So if I got a 14 inch foot and my shoe is 13 and a half, I know I'm going to be in kind of a bad place, right? Also know if the shoe is 15 inches circumference, I'm going to be in a bad place too, because I got an extra 1/2 inch I don't know what to do with. So that's the benefit of the handmade shoes, is you can make it exactly what you want. So I'm just going to go to where my weight bearing is at the heel, and he's shockingly at 14 inches. So I want my finished shoe to be 14 and a half inches. So if I'm using like 3/8, 7/8 concave, I'm subtract just under 2 inches. So 14 and a half minus just under 2 is just under 12 and a half. The same deal, there's really no knife work to do. I do like to clean up some of my tags. For the AFA certification, if they can grab a little tag and wiggle it, that's kind of, you're losing a point there. But once again, it's easy to do too much. Just trying to remove material so I can look at my foot here a bit. So most horses on the front end are going to be they kind of want to grow slightly high laterally, because a majority of horses kind of stand slightly rotated inward. And I've noticed that with upright feet being a little bit more that way. So a lot of times I'll kind of bevel the leading edge of the heel. Take some of that like ground force reaction sting out. So right now when I'm sighting the foot, I'm trying to find the high spots and doing just the high spots. I'm not running the rasp all over the place. I'm just going to one spot that I thought was high, hit it with a rasp. You're out there.
Your day-to-day, are you rasping like this, or are you just kind of burning flat?
I actually rasp as flat as I can.
Yeah, you're doing the front end.
And make clips a little easier to do that with cake clips. Unless you modify the cake clips.
Nice one.
So yeah, so this foot's just a little bit bigger. Yeah, I don't know what I want to do on the Hinds, honestly. Thought about toe clipping them.
Really? Interesting.
You know, so the thing is the bottom part of his foot doesn't look like there's a problem. So he's not so sore that he's trying to shorten his toe, in my opinion. A lot of it's environmental So if I could protect it with something, and so I found a toe clip works really well, just a little bumper out in front. It doesn't necessarily mean someone want to cut me 12 and a half inches of 3 8 7 8? Sure. 12 and a half? 12 and a half, yeah. 2 pieces. Yeah. So we're going to do the front with some concave. And we're going to do the Hinds here with some cake shoes. We'll pull some clips on them and stuff. So these hind feet are just as bad as the fronts as far as having something to trim. All right, so we'll do a frog plane on this one here. So about there. It's frog leg. You could go from the lateral commissure too. So it's like at 3 and 5/8 and 3 3/4 roughly. And right now his toe is at 3 3/4. So there's of enough just to flatten with a rasp and burn. There's not much more length to take off on that horse. So that hind foot measures 14. So see how these fit. They're just at 14. Take the pair of tubes. Let's see if this lasts. That's better. Alright, so same deal. We'll look at the frog plane again. He's pretty much right there. We'll look at about 3 3/4. About 3 7/8. Just a touch more toe on this foot. Doesn't mean it's long, it's just a touch more than the other foot. Alright. So, for a lot of this horse, it's just kind of damage control. Try to stay out of harm's way and leave myself as much fudge room to work with. And like I said, we're going to leave, there's flaring all around that foot, but I don't want to take any away, so I'm trying to have just as much wall thickness as I can possibly have to get nailed up safely. So now we're going to get ready to make some shoes. A couple things I like to look at when I'm get ready to go shape. Go shape shoes, whether it's handmades or not. So for the left front, you got kind of a broad square toe, straight branches, kind of an acute outside quarter bend, right? So for this particular horse, this white line, whitest part of this white line is right there on the outside, and it's right there. Right there on the inside. And we see that the quarters are not across, the whitest part of his feet aren't across from each other. If you've been to a gym quick clinic, he explains it pretty well, is that the quarters are going to be 90 degrees to the spine. So if a horse is standing and they got a slight rotation on the front end, if this is, these my quarters are across from each other, and I rotate this way, the inside's lower, outside's higher, or this way, reverse, right? So if you want to be able to tell what the horse has got going on, you hang the limb forward from the carcass, and just hang it down, and it's actually pretty straight. Kind of just cocks a little bit at the end, but I mean it's about as straight as you're going to see on a modern day horse. But I'm going to know that my outside is farther back than my inside. So, you know, learning to draw feet a little bit. So we've got kind of a broad toe, straight branches, and it's got kind of a late quarter. With it outside being farther down, and the inside is up higher. And then if you know your measurements, so Cody Gregory makes his little rulers that fit in the knife pocket pretty nicely. And then there's left, right, and front things, so you can go, okay, that's my left. And my diagonal measurement's the same. So he's about 5 1/4 wide, about 5 1/4 long, about 3 inches between the heels. So when I'm not going to come back unless I've got someone of this shape. I've got 1/4 slightly higher than the other quarter. This is my outside. I'll make sure this is 3 inches here and just over 5 1/4. So the hardest thing, fitting wise, is coming out of the toe and then getting it out to that outside quarter, then back around to the heel. And I don't know how many times you nail up and you take a rasp to the outside quarter, kind of bring that back underneath the shoe. And that's because you didn't come out of the toe at the right angle to get all the way out to the lateral portion of the coffin bone to get back underneath the heels. Does that make sense? And also where the bars kind of terminate into the sole. But if you take your middle finger, you grab the shelf or the cornet band, and then try to put your thumb on top of it, that's usually right where the center of our rotation is. And you can do that with a horse with pads on already. So if the horse is shod with a pad and all that stuff, you can just palpate. And it's like I said, it's a guide. It's not foolproof, but I've done a handful of feet and put a thumbtack on there where I thought it was, and it's as close as anything else. So, because those other things can change. You know, the wall can change. The bars might not tell you where you're at, but it's just one more point. But with that being said, if the current ideal is a shoe around 50-50 around that rotational aspect of the foot, the biomechanical rotational aspect of the foot, this is just a W brand ruler I cut in half. So, come back to the widest part of my heels, last weight bearing. It's about 2 3/8, and if I go forward, the end of my toe is at 2 3/4. So already, day one, if I perimeter fit that foot without any modification, he's already like at 60% out front and 40% in the back. So what do you think is going to happen in 6 weeks? Or 5 weeks when the vet comes out to radiograph your limb? Not going to look really good, right? So we're caught up in that, having to do something to try to maintain good alignment and stuff of the foot and the limb through an ever-changing, growing, shoeing cycle. So that's where shoe modifications and stuff come in handy. So I rotate my horses through some form of either flat, completely perimeter fit shoes, set off the toe, flat shoes, set off the toe, with a rolled toe, rocker toes a lot, sometimes toe clips, a lot of times like quarter or side clips. It just depends on what I think is going to get me to the finish line 5 or 6 weeks later with the least amount of red flags for someone to get me in trouble with. So I don't necessarily feel like I live in a state of anxiety, but there's probably some weird, I'm always thinking what someone's going to say that is going to influence my family's life in ways just different. So with that said, as I'm making the shoe, because this horse has not a lot of foot, I don't want to take away from it as far as coming under. I want to give him as much perimeter support as I can. So I have to augment that extra 10% of foot in front of that line somehow. So I either keep everything flat, fold the concave over, so I bring that back another half an inch. I can keep it, I can roll it, I can rocker it. And at one time, maybe if he had more foot, you could come off the toe. I just don't think it'd be great for him. So, does anybody have any questions or anything about that?
Why'd you go with 7/8?